Hey guys, Waterfowler41 here, and in today's video we're going to be installing the Packbrake oil filter relocation kit on my 2020 Ram Rebel. Before I get too far down the road, huge shout out to the Packbrake team for providing me with the kit so I could film a video for you all. I had my eye on this kit for a long time. It solves one of the biggest design flaws I think on the Ram, or these new body style Rams, and they were gracious enough to supply me with the kit, so again I could film a video and show you the benefits of this kit, but also how to install it. So anyway, what we're going to do here real quick is go through all the contents in the kit itself. So here's everything that comes in the Packbrake order when you do pick up the oil relocation kit, and then some additional supplies, which for obvious reasons you're going to need oil, and basically doing an oil change here. So this is kit 10363. Obviously comes with some installation instructions, which are very self-explanatory, and then you get some hardware. So what the big things that come in the kit. Obviously, you get this nice blue anodized aluminum block here, and this is essentially what's going to be replacing your oil filter on the actual engine block itself, in conjunction with this little sleeve here. Then you got some hardware to mount the relocation bracket. Then you have the new head, the remote head, that's going to be where you attach your new oil filter. And then you have a bunch of oil filter fittings. So you got 3 short 90s, 1 long 90. You got some oil hoses here, some zip ties to keep everything up out of the way, and obviously some O-rings that will be used on the oil filter head, which installs on the engine. So you're going to have one up here, and then you're going to have one that installs on the sleeve here. In addition to the contents that come in the kit, you're also going to need to pick up some oil. So 7 quarts in this bad boy, 5W20, Mobile 1 is what I use. But basically the whole intent of me installing this kit is so I could move where that oil filter is at now and move it up and out of the way for 2 reasons. One, right now it's located, and we'll take a look at this in a second, it's located up over the CV joint, so that every time you open up that oil filter or loosen it up, it just dumps oil on everything, which is absolutely irritating. Also, what this will do is move that oil filter to an easier accessible location. Other folks who may be interested in this kit, if they're going to be throwing some forced induction on their engines, or a few other goodies where you want to move that oil out, or the oil filter out of the way. So this is the kit for you. But anyway, this is the 10363 kit, and this will fit your 2019 and newer Ram 5.7 Hemi engines. All right, so let's get with the installation here. So the first thing you want to do is locate that new oil filter head here. So basically this is what gets installed on the engine block itself. What we're going to do here is thread 190 directly into the side here. And then we're going to take another 90 and we're going to thread that into the bottom portion of this sleeve here. The sleeve here is basically what is now going to feed one side of these oil filter, or these oil hoses, and then this fitting here is going to feed the other side of the oil hoses. But we need to install 90 on here, and we need to make sure we check the orientation. I'll show you once it's fully installed how that part looks. We're also going to need to grab our our O-rings. And these O-rings, one of them gets installed right inside here, so we have a nice good seal between this portion of the block, or the aluminum, and the engine head. And then the other O-ring is going to go right around the neck here on this little sleeve here, and that's what's going to make sure we have a nice tight seal when we do eventually slide this on. Ultimately, when we go to install this on the truck itself, this little piece is going to slide up through here and basically act as a bolt, and it's going to thread onto the existing oil filter, I guess the input, I guess, where the oil is going to be sucked out of the oil filter. All right, we are moving right along with the installation here. So I already have this guy set up. You got to make sure those lock nuts are up against the portion that you're threading into so that you can tighten these down. The instructions say 37 foot-pounds. I don't have a torque wrench that small, but that's what you're shooting for on both of these. So then the other one's going to get threaded into the actual aluminum block here. And you want to make sure that it's oriented out to towards you, so it's pointing out at 90 degrees toward you. So basically that Packbrake logo, and you want to have the oil fitting pointing towards you, so it's coming out of the fitting the right orientation. The 2 O-rings, one O-ring is here, the other smaller O-ring is here. You'll see everything's got kind of a greasy look to it. Well, it's because I used some of the oil to make sure that I lubricated those O-rings. You kind of want to do that all the time, just like you would with a new oil filter. You want to do that with these O-rings so you get a nice good seal. So what we'll do is go ahead and set those aside, and then we're going to turn our attention to this piece. So now what we're going to do is attach this piece to the actual relocation bracket using this hardware right here. And then after we install it to the bracket, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing with these oil filter fittings. The short one's going to go on the out port, and then the longer one's going to go on the in port. So again, both of those are going to be facing out. All right, so we have our plate and our relocation head all ready to go. The assembly is all built up. So just a quick little overview of what all you got going on here. So again, you got the two 90-degree oil fittings coming out of the top of the relocation head. That taller one comes out of the in port, and the shorter one comes out of the out port. Both of those will face you when you're looking at the Packbrake logo. Kit. Then you want to go ahead and bolt the relocation head to the bracket. There is a bend in the bracket, and this is the orientation. So you want that bend to point to the back. So now what we could do is turn our attention up underneath the truck. But now what we need to do is pull off that oil filter that I currently have on my truck and get all messy. I wanted to avoid that and wait till the absolute end so my hands weren't super dirty. But the beauty is most of this kit is assembled before you even put it on the truck. But let's go ahead and get that oil filter out, get some lighting underneath the truck, and I'll show you where this bracket goes, how you install that guy, these two, and then how we install these. Okay, so we are underneath the truck here. So you can see the Packbrake oil filter head is loosely installed on where the oil filter goes into the actual engine block. And then I'm on the passenger side, and you can see it's my passenger tire here, and you see this little block here. So this block here has two holes. So these two holes are where the two holes on our relocation bracket are gonna line up. So I'm gonna need two hands here, but basically the new relocated oil filter head goes right into that using those two supplied bolts. And then the oil filter hoses will run from the top of where that relocation head will be right over here. So what that means is we're going to need to mess around with how those oil filter or those oil fittings are oriented to make sure that it's going to give us the most direct shot. And what I may do is actually install one of the hoses, the one that actually goes on the collar of the new oil filter head. That way I can get it up and installed out of the way, and then I could basically hold it where it needs to go, and I can then install the bottom portion afterwards. It'll make sense in a minute here once I get everything starting to kind of come together. But let's go ahead and get that oil filter relocation head mounted onto this little portion here. Again, this is on the passenger side. This is going to use that bolt, those two big washers, and then the two big nuts, and then that should bolt right to the frame. And then this becomes your new location for your oil filter. Up out of the way, you're not going to bash it on anything. It's up above the frame, but it's also much easier and cleaner. So you can see, I don't know if I cleaned up most of it, but I did drop the factory oil or the original oil filter when I went to go take it out. But let's go ahead and get that oil filter relocation bracket mounted so that we can start messing around with where those lines are going to go. I think this is going to take a lot of testing and tuning, but it'll be well worth it in the end once we get everything fully installed. Okay, so I have that new oil filter, the Packbrake oil filter head, pulled out of the engine bay. Like I said, what I'm going to do is loosen up this fitting and point it down just a tad so the hose, once it's attached, clears the hose next to it. There's a hose inside the engine bay that touches it pretty closely. And then we can go ahead and attach the hose. It might be a little clunky to reinstall this inside the engine bay, but I think it's easier to tighten this guy down with this out of the truck than it is with it in the truck. Then what we'll do is go ahead and reinstall this guy, and then we'll attach this hose to the bottom portion. So from a hose orientation standpoint, you're going to have this center fitting because it installs in the center there, and then you have your center fitting on the oil filter relocation head. So those center ones are going to attach to each other with the same hose. And then the outside fitting, so this is the outside fitting here, and then there's that longer fitting on the oil filter relocation side of things. That's what this hose is going to connect it to. And these are both the same size, so you can't get them messed up. You can mark them if you need to, but basically center to center, outside to outside. So okay, so you can see the new Packbrake fitting is installed on where the original oil filter was installed on the engine. I have both hoses installed here. So the outside hose was installed before I reinstalled the Packbrake fitting on there, and then the middle hose here, so this attaches to the bottom of that oil filter. You can see right there with that elbow. I installed this after that guy was reinstalled back onto the truck. What you'll notice here is I'm missing the relocation filter, so where the new oil filter is going to install. The reason being is I had to adjust the fittings. So what I did is I installed these hoses, I took the fittings off here, I loosened them, loosely installed them onto the hoses so I could figure out what angle they need to be at. So these hoses don't have a lot of give, so you're going to need to move those fittings in a more adaptable position for them. So let me go ahead and get the fittings here installed on the hose first, and then I'm going to reinstall it on the bracket. I think that's going to be an easier way to do it. And then what we'll do is we'll take a look at everything. Remember, center hose fitting goes to the center hose fitting on each side. The outside hose fitting goes to the outside hose fitting on each side. Let me go ahead and get these oil lines connected and we'll take a look at the finished product. All right, so the oil filter relocation kit is fully installed. So some tricks here. You'll notice that the fittings aren't pointing the exact same direction. A lot of that has to do with the oil filter lines here. They're the same size, but they're different length runs. So you got to kind of bend these a little bit, and there's not a lot to give to them. So what I did is I loosened the fittings. I loosely installed both hoses on top of here. I tried to align it with the plate, and I let the hoses tell me what angle those fittings need to be at. And again, they're a little bit off from each other, but it helped make those lines fit perfectly fine. Then the other trick is, once you tighten down those fittings, once you know that angle that they need to be at, before you install the top blue piece to the bracket itself, go ahead and loosely install the oil filter or the oil lines to the fittings. Loosely, don't tighten them yet. Install this guy to the bracket and then go back in and tighten down the oil lines. It'll make it a lot easier. Once you tighten down those oil lines, the whole oil line itself is not going to want to spin, and you're going to want some play in it when you go to install this guy back to the bracket. But everything is installed, everything's taut. Went back through, made sure all the fittings, this portion, the lock nuts here, are fully seated. Went through and made sure that the lines are fully seated, and then also just double check, triple check, quadruple check, and made sure all of the lines are run properly. Again, the center line from the bottom of the original oil filter location runs to the center fitting on the oil filter relocation kit. The outside line runs to that outside fitting on the portion that attaches to the engine. The next thing we need to do is get our oil filter. So this is going to reuse the factory oil filter specs. So I went out and bought a new one. Anyway, before we install that oil filter, what we're going to want to do is actually pour oil in it to prime it. That way you fill those lines a lot faster. So we're going to fill our oil filter, install it, pour the rest of the oil inside the engine, and then start it up, check our oil level, check our oil pressure, check for leaks, and then we should be good to go. So let's go ahead and get the oil filter installed. All right, so we have our oil filter installed. Again, I poured oil in it to prime it. That way the oil filter or those new oil lines fill faster. But I'm gonna go ahead and pour the rest of the oil in the engine, get everything set up, ready to go, get all my tools out of the way. And then what we'll do is we'll fire up the engine, just let it sit here, and then I'll go through and check for leaks. Let the engine warm up, and then once it warms up, I'll monitor that engine pressure. Again, we're looking for anywhere from 32 to 34 PSI because that would be factory. So all right, it is a new day. Yesterday I ran out of daylight and frankly just time to close out the video. But let's talk through the last few steps that I did here. So once I got everything closed up and oil back in the engine, I fired the truck up, I let it get up to the temperature. I monitored the oil pressure on my dash. Everything is good to go on that front. After I let it idle for a few minutes, I went up underneath and just checked every fitting along the oil filter relocation path just to make sure nothing was leaking. We were good on that one. Took the truck for a lap around the block. Again, double checked everything again there. But that is the installation of the Packbrake oil filter relocation kit. If you are doing some major engine mods and you need to move that oil filter out of the way, or you're like me and you're just frankly sick of the mess that oil filter location in the factory position makes, installing that relocation kit is the answer. But one quick thing here. So again, just kind of from accessing the oil filter. So I'm on the front passenger side. So if I hop down here, you look up underneath, and there is our oil filter. So you can get to it without even going up underneath the engine itself or up underneath the truck. But it is protected by chassis, cross members, bumpers, and everything. So you don't have any sort of risk as far as impacting that on the road. But like I said, that's the installation of the oil filter relocation kit from Packbrake. Again, huge thank you to that team for helping me, rock this video and knock it out for you so you all can see the installation. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. I will leave a direct link to this kit in my video description. So if you want to purchase it yourself, you can head right to that link and make your own purchase. But with that said, thank you very much for watching. Appreciate it. Bye.